In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use Crosser to get your machine data into an Azure Data Lake storage service. I have used Modbus as an example here, but this could of course have been any other machine connector or an OPC UA connector. The concept will be the same. But in the case of Modbus, we don't really have any information about the data that is available. The PLC just presents a flat address space that we need to make some sense out of. So we need to provide that additional information on what data to get and how to interpret it. And you can do that either by configuring the module itself with the settings and define individual registers that you want to read, which is useful if it's just a few registers. But if it's a large number, then the typical way of doing that is instead to provide a file where we have defined and structured the data that we want to use. And that's what I've done in this example. So I've uploaded a file into our resource library. And if we take a look at that file, we can see what it looks like. So here we specify the data that we want to read from the PLC, which registers to read, how to interpret the data, what data type it is. But with this file, we can also add and contextualize the data by adding additional information. So we have used that here by providing a name for these tags. We've added an ID of the machine where the data is coming from, and also a line ID to specify which processing line this machine belongs to. But this could, of course, have been any type of data that we want to add in addition to the actual sensor values that we're reading from the machine, so that this data becomes more useful later on when we want to process and use this data for whatever purpose it might be. So here we can add any additional information that we will need further on when using this data. So this is our input, and when we get data from the PLC, it will end up as a list like we see on the right hand side. So we get a list of all the registers that we have specified to read, including the additional information that we added in that resource file that I just showed you. So this is the data that we have to work with, and we will now send that up to the Azure Data Lake. We could take this data as is, but just to do something with the data, I've here added some modules to tweak the data a little bit. First of all, we want to add a timestamp to each of these measurements so that we can keep track of the time. And also there were some additional information in the data coming out of the Modbus Reader module, which were added automatically by the module. And in this case, we were not interested in them, so I decided to remove them. So we simplify the data a little bit. So that is done by iterating over all these registers that we have read and then tweaking the format of each data set using a property mapper module. So at this point, we will have data that is ready to be sent to Azure. Now this is a storage server, so in most cases you don't want to upload very small amounts of data each time. You typically want to collect a larger batch of data before you upload it and create the file in the storage service. So that's what we're doing with this last two modules here. So first we append data to a local CSV file, and then we create a new file every 5 minutes in this case, which is of course configurable. So every 5 minutes we will create a new file, and when we rotate these files, then there will be an output from this module containing the name of the file that was just created, and we then send or use that message to trigger the final module, which is the module that will upload this local file into the Azure Data Lake. And if this upload was successful, then this final module will also remove the file from local storage, so we don't start to consume a lot of local storage space. So this is a very simple example of how you can transfer machine data into the cloud and store it in a cloud service like the Data Lake. This can of course be extended with more processing of the data. You can add more input sources. Now we just have a single PLC. You can add any number of PLCs of different types and so forth. But this is just to give you an idea of how Crosser works to transfer on-premise machine data into a cloud storage service. Thank you for listening.